Walpole Film Festival started in 2003 as one of the first high school film festivals in the country. The program has been recognized nationally as a model for creativity and collaboration in the classroom. Students in the program are required to follow each step in modern independent digital filmmaking. This includes screenwriting, acting, art direction, shooting on digital cameras, editing on professional software, and composing original music. The festival culminates each year with a red carpet ceremony that celebrates the achievements of each crew. To learn more about this year's Walpole Film Festival and how to become a sponsor, please visit our website, walpolefilmfestival.com. Thank you and enjoy the movie.
I feel like mental health is talked about amongst our school and in society, but they talk about it, but it's not really in a helping way. They just talk about the facts of it.
Quite honestly, I think it needs to have more attention because, we as teenagers these days, we have so much more extra stress. There needs to be a better job of getting the message out there that mental health is a very important topic that needs to be discussed and needs to be addressed.
Hi, my name is Mahika. So I just wanted to share a story that happened to me, really personal, about a little more than a year ago. So I think during last year I was taking 10th grade, I was taking some really hard classes and I was just feeling really stressed and pressured. And I think a lot of it was coming from my family.
I was a competitive gymnast for 14 years. I was introduced to the sport when I was about 3 or 4 years old. It was just kind of one of those things that my parents put me in because I was a kid who had a lot of energy. I took a natural affinity to the sport. It was kind of my escape from everything at home, from my parents' divorce, and from the stress at school. Freshman year of high school, I suffered my first injury. I went into a meet with a fractured wrist and a fractured back, but I still wanted to compete, so I did so without using my hands. And it was then that I tore my hip.
When I was younger, I was the happiest kid. I was always smiling, I was always there for people, I was joking, I would be the friendliest person. And then in 7th grade, I moved to Massachusetts from Colorado for family issues, and then that's when everything started to go downhill for me.
I want you to read this out loud and then tell me what you think that is.
I am worried about Ed. He has said some things about hurting himself.
Where do you think that came from?
Well, it must have come from a student, obviously.
Do you know what the SOS box is?
No.
The SOS box stands for Signs of Suicide, and if you have a friend or family member who you think is acting depressed or shows signs of suicide, you could write down a note like this and put it in the box.
This is an example of something that would be put in the SOS box. I want you to read it out loud and then respond to it looking at the camera.
All right. Hi, I'm Billy, and I like to fart.
Okay, so what's your response to that? What would you say to that person?
It's definitely not okay. The SOS box is a place for serious concerns, and for you to be taking that lightly and treating it as a joke is not right at all.
I'm Ferro. I'm the school psychologist here at Walpole High School. I help students in need for any issues that they have. One of the most prevalent things we deal with nowadays is students' mental health. At our school, we have an SOS box, which is an anonymous place to put information that I check on a daily basis that students can use because they don't know who else to go to. And I get a lot of information in those boxes. Some of it's pretty serious. Fire Within is a mental health suicide awareness program for students created from a Carson Spencer Foundation that really originally worked with the Columbine High School, and they learned that students are so much better at working with other students than adults are.
Last summer, our group made a planner that really targets that feeling of really feeling alone and feeling like you have no one to talk to.
At the beginning of the planner, there's a section that has resources for teenagers to help them address problems that they might have, whether it be anorexia, stress, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, and things like that. So it's like phone numbers, websites, and things in that nature that they can go to get help and just to research more about problems they feel like they have.
My name is Sarah Gare. I'm a suicide prevention specialist with Riverside Trauma Center. The Fire Within program is a really unique program because it gives young people the opportunity to talk about and address the issue of suicide within their community and their school. And it was a wonderful experience working with all of the students, but the Walpole students were special. They really took this program and made it a really important and special part of their life, and they did so voluntarily, which was different than most of the other programs that I ran.
There are significant amount of mental illnesses that students deal with. A very common one for teenagers is eating disorders. And then there's any kind of psychiatric involvement because of a tragedy or the difficulty someone has in life that evolves into something that really causes mental illness.
So I would say that about 20% of the patients I see every week have some passive suicidal ideation. So they may feel hopeless, feel like they want to die. Some of them have thought about, at times, how they might do it.
So I took an overdose of a medicine, and I felt, at that moment, I felt like I wanted to die, and I didn't want to live anymore. But right when I did it, I was like, oh no, Mahika, what did you just do? Like, you do want to live, you want to go to college. This is a small thing. You can go past this. You can get through it. So I called my best friend and I told her what I just did, and she told me, she said, go tell your parents, it's gonna be okay. And I was like, I can't do that. I just can't talk to my parents. She was like, or call the police, you gotta do something. And I just couldn't get myself to do it. I wanted to stay alive, but I just couldn't face my parents. So luckily in that situation, my best friend, her parents also knew my parents. So she told her parents right when she was talking to me, and her parents called my parents, and my parents came upstairs and they got me and they took me to the emergency room at the hospital, and luckily everything turned out okay, and it's like a big relief now that I think about it that I didn't have like a long-lasting health problem, which was really good.
After I quit, I just stopped taking care of my body, and I was getting upset because I thought I was getting fat from not being athletic and from having all these injuries that I couldn't do anything. So it was just kind of a natural instinct for me to stop eating. And so in December I was diagnosed with an eating disorder. I didn't feel like I did when I did gymnastics, and I felt that nothing could replace that feeling. I remember going to the doctors. I was about 102 pounds, and my doctor told me that if I lost any more weight, she was gonna have to hospitalize me. So I went back to her, and my weight dropped below 100 to about 97 pounds. She sent me to the hospital that day again, and it was really hard for me to realize what was going on, but when I saw like the look on my mom's face and the not disappointment, but how upset she was and how bad she felt because she thought she failed me as a parent was very difficult. And my sister as well, she came to the hospital and visited me, and she was very upset that she even cried, which made me really emotional because that was when I realized that what I was doing was hurting not only myself but everyone around me.
Going into junior year, everything started to go downhill again. The stress of school, the stress of life, everything. So the first 2 weeks of school, I couldn't handle myself. I couldn't go to school. I couldn't do anything. And I had to be hospitalized again because of my depression. All these emotions came rushing in my head and I didn't know what to do with them. I was stuck with all these feelings of guilt for bringing my family down, for bringing my friends down with me, and I thought the best thing for me to do would just be to leave forever.
So I Am Strong is a nonprofit organization that was founded specifically to help people think about and shatter the stigma surrounding teenage mental health for teenagers and the people that love them.
September 6th of 2014 was just a regular day in our home. Isabel she played soccer and she was a ref and she did all those things. It was a beautiful sunny Saturday morning. Towards the end of the day, things changed in our family, and unfortunately, we lost Isabel to suicide that afternoon. It has affected us in more ways than I can ever imagine. I think one of the things about losing someone to suicide is you continuously go back to that day and what could have been different? What did I miss? How could this have happened? What could I have said different? What led up to this moment? You want to redo the entire day because you feel like you could have done something to prevent it or something to change that day.
So there's some confusion sometimes about the difference between a suicide survivor and a suicide loss survivor and a suicide attempt survivor. So the differences are these. A suicide attempt survivor is someone who has made a suicide attempt and survived it. And the really amazing news is that 90% of people who make an attempt and survive it will never attempt suicide again, which really helps to combat the concept or the idea that if people want to take their lives, they're going to do it no matter what. We actually know that's not true. A suicide loss survivor has historically been called a suicide survivor, but that was confusing. So now we use the term suicide loss survivor, and that's somebody who's lost a loved one or a friend or a coworker to a suicide death.
I think mental health in our society certainly has this little bit of a stigma to it where people don't understand it. When someone has a broken leg or a cut or a physical reminder, they're in a wheelchair or they use a cane, it's pretty obvious that they need help. They need some support in some way, even if it's minimal. Someone with mental health concerns, you really have to know the person well, and then if they do something that's a little different and you don't know that person, you're a little put off by it. So I think in our society, it's been pushed aside because you don't see it. You can't see it. It comes from within.
I think it's so stigmatized. People think that it may be not real. People often say that sadness and depression are the same thing when they're not. And so that people don't like to come forward because they're afraid. They're afraid of that stigma. They're afraid of being told, oh, just get over it. They're afraid of being told, oh, if you've got a mental health illness, you can't do and fill in the blank. Mm-hmm. And so the fact is that's why people hold back.
Taking someone who's not functioning well, maybe they're even at a point where they're not able to work, they've stopped doing things that they were interested in, and seeing them come back to life again, seeing them get a job or start getting good grades in school and start joining clubs and back into sports and friends, or that is the single most rewarding part.
I'm living in such a better life and have a loving family and friends, and I'm just so much happier, and I live every day to the fullest, knowing that if that night hadn't gone the way that it did, and if I hadn't called my best friend, that I wouldn't be here. So I'm just so happy that I am.
As you advance in high school, I also think that it's something that becomes less addressed, and it's in those times when you're maturing and you're advancing that you may really struggle with stress or some family issues, and I think that definitely there are ways that we can better address this.
It's a scary thought when you don't want to live anymore. You don't know what to do. You don't know if you want to continue. You lost all hope in yourself. You lost all hope in life. But if you're ever in that position, just know that there's a point to your life. There's a point to living. You were created for a reason, and people will miss you. People will need you in your life. You are important. You are important to your family. You're important to your friends. You're important to society. Just never forget that.
If you feel like you could help a student in any way, just to be a friend, just to be a lend an ear, listen to your friends, get help any way you can. You have so many people that you can get help with, and do it now. Do it as soon as you can. But I'd like to get more kids involved, because the more kids you get involved, the trickle-down effect is huge. And we've proven that. It works. Let us help you.
I have struggled with mental health, and a lot of the times I kind of feel like, why me? Why is it just like, why do I feel this way?
I suffered from really, really bad anxiety.
So I have very bad anxiety.
At this point, I've had anxiety and I've dealt with it for so long that it's just more self-pity.
I struggled with depression and self-harm.
I probably have an anxiety disorder. I have never been diagnosed. I've skirted towards getting a therapist many times, but never quite gotten there. That's partially a problem with me. Definitely, it's hard to try to get help for it, but I know it affects me daily.
I would cry every time I would have to leave my house because I would just be so scared of what would happen when I would leave my house. I was just so fearful of what other people were going to do to me that I just couldn't even function on my own going out of my house.
Because I almost don't feel it anymore because I've come so accustomed to it.
It's not just black and white. There's a gray area where you have to look at it. And because if your mind's not right, then what you can do can cause harm. So honestly, it's more complicated than I think people would like to think.
From having listened to many, many, many people who were struggling with thoughts of suicide, is kind of like maybe it would be like if they were a bear or a wolf with their paw stuck in a trap, and that the trap is the pain and the sadness, and that the reaction is just really anything to try to get out of it. And when we are able to get to that person and we're able to help lift that trap off their foot, it's an unbelievable amount of relief that then gives them the opportunity to not only heal the wounds of their foot, but to also see how life can be much, much better.
Thank you.